Hey guys, Moose here with another episode of No Man's Sky. This is actually going to be the last one, unless I come back to it at a later date. So, last episode I talked a lot about how I just don't see I don't see Hello Games coming back from this, and I think they're pretty much finished. Either through obscurity, just no one pays attention to their games anymore, and they barely sell any, or they just stop existing because they fold. I just don't see them being a thing anymore. I don't see how that's going to work for a variety of number of reasons. It basically comes down to the cost of recovering this developer, which isn't justified because they're not established enough to be worth saving for the most part. But it'll be interesting to see if I'm wrong about that. I don't know how it's going to play out, because there are situations where games are salvaged. But I think in all of them that I can remember, pretty much you're looking at a very well-established brand that has seriously something to lose. They need to earn the goodwill back because there's other properties riding on it. Oh, this is wonderful. Our ship isn't totally like inside of a rock here. God forbid we land on an angle. But, like, one example... Excuse me, very late at night. Gotta get up for work soon here, but, one example that comes to mind from my personal life that I've experienced actually both sides of, both the shit version that got remade and the remake, is Final Fantasy XIV. And I think in that case, it's abundantly obvious, you know, obviously Square Enix needs to salvage their brand. That's a mainline Final Fantasy title. It's not the single-player ones, but it's still, like, if you fuck that up, people are gonna notice. And people did notice, and it was panned. Like, people hated that. And to be completely fair, there were actually aspects of that game that were really good. 1.0, I mean. But there were also aspects of it that made it completely unplayable. And even if you do some things right, it doesn't matter if you make the game pretty much unplayable. And they did, so they had to redo it. And honestly, I think I'll get into this in a review at some point, but I actually believe that Final Fantasy XIV is going to die sooner than people think. Because if I went into it, I hadn't played it before, and I played it enough to do a review, and kind of played it to the point where I think I know what I'm talking about with the game, I'm going to tell you, hey, this is a good game, one of the most polished MMOs out there, really beautiful, great aesthetics, great music, gameplay's great, crafting's great, no complaints really. There's issues with it, of course, like there are with anything, but this is pretty much as good as you could expect it to be. And that's fair, and I think that's pretty much what you see if you look at reviews for FF14, even to this day. But the problem is, if you do a deeper dive and really look into it and start playing it long term, you very quickly notice some things about this game that are going to kill it, I think, in the relatively short-term future. Those vary from a lot of different factors, but among them is basically it's just gear treadmill endlessly. Everything in that game is gear treadmill. There's very little depth to the content. It's pretty much just, alright, well, new patch came out, do this new content, and receive this new gear. That's all it is. Which is not engaging at all. So, I've been having trouble playing it lately because of that. But it goes further than that. If you look at the different classes, they're pretty much, I mean, they're not all the same, but within, like, a role, within damage dealer, within, like, tank, within healer. And it's a little bit varied for damage dealers because you have ranged, you have magic, you have melee. But if you go even within those subcategories, like all the melee damage dealers basically function the same way. If you look at all the different casters, they sort of function the same way. Those are a little bit more varied. All the healers basically function the same way. All the tanks basically function the same way. There's very little variety, and honestly, they've been stripping away variety. From the original 2.0 release up to, let's say, I think it was 2.5 was the last first version of the remake. it was a little bit more varied, but then once the first expansion for the remake came out, a lot of the variety got stripped away because they added abilities, and it was very much a convergent evolution kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, Monk has this ability that you have to keep up, where you use an ability every certain period of time to maintain a buff on yourself. And they're like, okay, well that worked for Monk, so let's add it to every fucking melee DD. So now everyone has to do that. And it's a lot of different situations like that, because they've kind of designed themselves into a corner, where there's only a certain number of iterations on the same roles that they can have, and they've really made the healer, tank, damage dealer holy trinity like deeply built into the game, and they can't break free of that. So doing something like a support class is borderline impossible, and at the very least would be very imbalanced. So I don't see them being able to like expand. Here, let's just do this real quick. No words of meaning that I can get from that. Okay. Chemical formula, directional energy diagrams, microdensity devices. Ah, okay. Microdensity. Okay, I don't know what that's gonna teach me. Already known, don't care. Fantastic. Units received. Yay, a trivial number of units. Okay, why did I come? Alright, this thing. Okay, we got a number puzzle. We want a 6 in the first... No, we don't. We want a 2 in the first slot. And we want a 9 in the second slot. Yeah, there's only one. Okay. Easy. I like these, but I wish you couldn't just solve them. Like, the answers should be closer together. Because it would also give you a hint as to how you're supposed to solve it if you saw that. I mean, I was able to figure it out because I get this kind of thing, I enjoy it, but I think if you come into this as someone who doesn't really care about numbers, doesn't really pay attention to numbers, and hasn't done any puzzles like that before, it might be a little weird first to figure out, okay, well, this one's correct because of this reason. You don't necessarily know what it's asking you to find. So, it might be better if the answers were like, okay, well, the first one has to be a 2, and the second one has to be a 9. So you'd give them, every answer would start with a 2, and every answer but one would start with a 9, or something like that. That might help someone understand what you're looking for when you do a puzzle like that. But anyway, getting back to why I think 14 is going to die so quickly. Pretty much all the rules are the same, and on top of that, they can really only do what they've already done. There's very little room to expand because the roles are so rigidly defined, and you have to have this many damage dealers, you have to have this many tanks, you have to have this many healers for everything in the game, unless it's not instanced, which there's virtually no content for. So I don't see where it's not that the game itself as it stands is bad, though I think it is because it's so focused on just grinding out gear every time there's a patch. There's nowhere to go. They've really designed themselves into a corner. So from my perspective, I don't see how that continues for any measurable period of time. It's going to die eventually, because it has to. There's just nothing they can do. Now, they could prove me wrong, but that's a huge design problem. I mean, they're going to have to redesign like some really core aspects of the game, and it's going to be difficult. And it may be a situation where they absolutely have to just say fuck it, and then say, okay, well, when this new patch hits, now we're adding a new role. And it works like blah blah blah, and you have to have one for everything, or they just take away those requirements completely and try to make everything a little bit more universal, which would be equally difficult, I feel. And those are both going to require really, really dramatic changes to the way the game functions, and would probably require something to be very much specific to the newest expansion. Like, if you didn't have that, you could not play the game as it exists currently. in this hypothetical scenario. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think that happens. I think, given that they've gone the gear treadmill route, I think they're just going to be lazy and keep doing that. I just don't see how they're going to do anything else. It's the easiest route to just keep iterating on the same bullshit, not really do anything different. And the gear treadmill stuff makes me think they're lazy, so I don't expect anything beyond that, because they haven't shown me that I should expect anything beyond that. Please don't make me do combat. I don't want to deal with this shit right now. Yeah, I don't have any valuable cargo, thank you. You're gonna knock me out of pulse, god damn it. Yes, force me to partake in the combat, which is total crap. Makes me thrilled. Gonna have to recharge my beam too before this is over. There's 4 of them, it looks like. Okay, you're dead. You're gonna die next. Nope, you'll die next. Oh, I'm surprised I hit him there. Now we get to do what I talked about before, which is recharging shields in the middle. Oh, lovely. It's fucking my shit up real bad there. Recharge my shields in the middle of combat, because that's a good mechanic to have in your combat game. Even though combat's not the focus, that's just... This ship actually reminds me of one from X3. It's a Talati ship that basically looks like a... well... It's a dick. It's a space dildo. No getting around it. No, fuck you. Just blow all the iron on it, who cares, right? No one needs iron. Okay. Please die before I have to recharge you stupid beams. Yeah, you're going. 1%, fantastic. Plutonium, please. That took a shit ton of plutonium. Damium. Iron, good, we're good. Now take me where I wanted to go in the first place and don't interrupt me again. There we are. But yeah, they've designed themselves in a corner. I don't see where they're going to go from there. And they could easily surprise, or not easily, but they could surprise me. I just don't see it happening. It's a shame too, because the art's beautiful, the music is amazing. It deserves better gameplay to go along with it. But really the only interesting gameplay that I ever found was crafting. And frankly, even with the crafting, there's not nearly... like, they turned that into a gear treadmill situation. Oh, fuck. Good. They turned that into a gear treadmill situation too, so it's very hard for me to defend them even on that point, because they keep shooting themselves in the foot and going... they think everything has to operate in this one particular way that basically involves... you have a weekly reset for some currency where you can get a certain amount every week, and then it resets. And that's such a stupid system, because you're limiting the way your users can play. And it's a lazy, cheap way of limiting progress, and I don't feel like it does them any favors. So, it's one thing when they were doing that with combat stuff, because it turned into a... okay, you need a rare silicate. Dude, I don't fucking have chrysanite for whatever. Yeah. Alright, yeah, sorry buddy, but your idiot friend took my chrysanite before. Okay, let's sell stuff. Yeah, I just... I don't see it working, so... it's depressing, I want it to work. It's... for a long time I played that game and really enjoyed it, so I kind of hope it works, but I just don't... I don't see it working out long term for that game. Final Fantasy XIV, I mean... it'd be cool if it did, but they kind of mortgaged their future to save their present with the remake, I feel, and it worked. I mean, they saved their present, but once future became present, now we have a problem, right? That's a weird way of phrasing it, but I think that makes sense, probably. They painted themselves into a corner in order to attain short-term success. and I think it's going to backfire. I think it's already started backfiring. I don't know if they've noticed or not, but they will. They're gonna notice. And it's not gonna be fun. Alright, I'm starting to get a really big backpack here. I think it's bigger than our ship at this point. Which is kind of cool. Nope, V3, which I'm never gonna get, because I'm gonna stop playing this game before I get to that point, because there's nothing to do. Oh well. Anyway. No, that's a... See, this is like, okay. You have this procedurally generated game where everything is supposed to be new and amazing and special in its own little thing, and look at this. Same fucking ship, 2 colors. That's it. It's the same exact ship. Except for the... Okay, the cockpit's different. And what else is different? I think the rest of the stuff in the front is paired with the cockpit. I think this is like a front, middle, back kind of thing. So I think the rest is the same. Yes. See, I'd like to buy this ship. It's pretty cool looking, and it's probably quite... I mean, it ought to be big considering its physical size and also the... yeah, it's pretty big. But I can't get that. I'd have to grind out so much. Like, I don't... If I wanted to grind, I'd go play an MMO where I can at least show it off to other people, the results of my grinding. I'm not going to grind in this game. It's like the most pointless thing I could ever do. Well, at least you're doing this to me in a point where it makes no difference, so I appreciate that. Is that it? This is the only 2 planets here. No, undiscovered, so I get... No, okay, fine. Take a while to get to this stupid one, too. But yeah, there's... I feel like there's a lot of games like that. You know, No Man's Sky is a little bit one of them, where it's sort of... kind of going to spell disaster for the company that made it. And I feel like FF14, I mean, I don't know if it's made a I'm sure it's made a profit by this point, but I definitely think it's going to turn into a financial sink. Well, no, it's come on, it's an MMO, it's never going to turn into a financial sink, but I think it's going to not do as well as they may have hoped, because of some of the longer term decisions that have been made already and are incredibly hard to unmake. So it feels like there's a lot of that going around these days. It seems like, honestly, the most hopeful stuff I have, the cleanest, like, most polished stuff that I'm seeing for the most part is coming from indie studios. It's the weirdest thing. Like, you wouldn't think that indie studios would be the ones putting out quality, right? Because you'd imagine quality control is one of the first things you cut, right? I mean, it shouldn't be, but if you're developing a game, you've already cut most of the other stuff that you'd be able to cut. Everything you have left should be the essentials. And out of the essentials, stuff like beta testing traditionally is what you'd cut, right? Because you just say, oh, it's early access, pay me and I'll let you test it. That's the way they do it, right? But, you know, I go play something like, okay, well, Death Road for Canada. I don't know if that went through an early access period, but it's a polished game. It works exactly how it is. It sure as hell didn't give me a hard crash like No Man's Sky has today. And yet, it's an indie game. And I know No Man's Sky is an indie game too, but I think if you're charging $60 for it, and you're coming out on consoles, and you've got Sony backing you, and you've got so much freaking marketing going on, I don't think you're an indie game anymore. I think at a certain point, the money involved dictates that it's no longer an indie game. And that may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to stand by that one. I feel pretty strongly about that, and I think it's a reasonable perspective to have. Whereas Death Road to Canada, I don't think was ever anywhere close to that. Even like Stonehearth or something like... Stonehearth was maybe a bad example, because it's still... That one's really rough still. It's got a lot of lag issues where it just can't figure out what it wants to do. It's got a lot of... Not crashes, but definitely like serious bugs. This is interesting. Let's check this out. It's like an underwater building. I think this might be a bug. We're gonna check it out anyway, because it seems interesting. Threatening sentinels. Okay. That's interesting. There might be rare materials here then. But, I'm gonna really... Okay. I need to see what happens here. This is gonna be deeply interesting to me. I want to know if the building's flooded. You gonna fuck with me? You can try, but it's not gonna work out to your advantage. Okay, it's an abandoned building. That makes much more sense. Okay. Oh, sorry if I hit the mic there. Hope that didn't make any noise, but you never know until you go back and listen, unfortunately. Unless you know from experience, of course. Nothing else really in here. Alright, time to head out and head back to the ship. Alright, it's a stupid thing where you don't actually breathe until you're like above the water for like 20 seconds. Obviously that's hyperbole, but you get the idea. And they don't even call it breath, they call it fucking oxygen protection. It's so bizarre. Couldn't even bother to make that one a different name, huh? Alright, well, that is going to do it for our last episode of not Stonehearth, what am I talking about? No Man's Sky. It's quite tired. Oh, nice landing job. It's impressive. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope this series has at least taught you a little bit about the game. Maybe you can see that this isn't for you, or maybe you found that, you know, you're kind of okay with what's in the game and what isn't. You still would enjoy it at $60. Maybe that's a perfectly valid opinion if you want to have it. I don't agree with you, but if that's how you feel, if you get enjoyment out of the game that's worth $60, so be it. But I sure as hell didn't. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the series, and please take a look at my other series. I think you'll enjoy them quite a bit more than this one, unfortunately. Take care and see you elsewhere in my channel. Hopefully.